Hello there, film friends, and welcome to the Irish Film London podcast. I'm your host, Niamh Brannigan, and today we'll be starting off with our usual proceedings of Gerry Maguire and I catching you up with all things going on in the world of Irish film, TV and animation. I will then be chatting to the wonderful actors that are Carolyn, Bracken and Hazel Doupe, which will then be followed by a chat with Gerry and the director of You Are Not My Mother, Kate Dolan. A double bill for you guys today, so enjoy. To the Irish Film London podcast season 2. I always forget that it's season 2, which is very cool, the fact that we've done so many. Now we're on to season 2. Welcome, Gerry. How are you?
I'm very well, Niamh, thank you. I'm much better this week than I was last week. I was down with the COVID last week.
Finally got it.
Yeah, it's my second time getting it actually.
I thought I was invincible. I didn't get it up until a few weeks ago.
Everyone seems to have it now. Everyone seems to have it, but thankfully it seems to be moderately mild these days. So
yeah, it's a bit outdated. I feel like it's like, it's not kind of cool anymore.
Such a 2020 thing to get.
It is. It really is. But a fair bit has happened since our last podcast. One of which was the Oscars. Very entertaining evening altogether. I actually saw Chris Rock did a new he was doing a show a few days after. He was always doing it. I think it might be maybe a tour or something. And he came out and everyone was clapping, and he just started by saying, so how was your weekend? And he also said, which I thought was so great, he was like, so I had this whole show written and planned before my weekend. Yeah. And I'm going to do that show. I'm not going to talk about it because I'm still processing it. And what did he say? I think he said, and when I do talk about it, it's going to be serious and funny. But for the moment, we're just going to do the show, which I think was really great. You know, that he just kind of went, I'm forgetting about that for the moment. And I'm just doing the show and doing what you all paid tickets to see.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, can't fault the man for that.
I mean, he handled that very well.
He kind of did handle the whole thing remarkably well, actually.
Yeah.
I would say there's also a very good Saturday Night Live intro from a presenter called Gerard, and black guy, very good presenter. First time presenting Saturday Night Live, and his intro to the show starts off just saying, I'm not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it. This is only it's a thing that happened 5 days ago, and it's all anyone wanted to talk about still.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
I mean, exactly. I don't think anything we're going to say is something things that haven't already been said. So
I mean, I think we're doing a great job of talking about it without actually talking about it. So
do I. I'm quite impressed.
Well done.
Okay, so what actually did happen, and what actually really should have been talked about, is some of the incredible winners. Our best picture was Coda, and it was presented by Liza Minnelli and Lady Gaga, which was
lovely,
beautiful. And then Belfast won Best Original Screenplay, which is a nice little win for the Irish.
Yeah, congratulations to Ken Branagh for the win. Yeah,
an avid listener, I'm sure. Well done, Ken.
Of course. Yeah.
And who else did we have? We had Power the Dog won Best Director, the only female in the category, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
Who else? Oh, Best Supporting Actress. We had Anita from West Side Story. What was her name? Ariana DeBose. I hope I got that right. That was really that speech was so gorgeous as well. And who also did a very beautiful speech was Jessica Chastain. As well, who commented on the LGBTQ plus community as well in her speech. And then the Best Adapted Screenplay, that was Sian Heder, wasn't it?
Yeah, is it Sian Heder?
Is that it? Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. Really gorgeous film, Coda. Really, really gorgeous.
Yeah.
And then
I'm so happy to see it win. Like, I'm so happy to see a film like that, which was like in lots of ways an underdog. To see it come out on top in that category is really exciting. And I think that's the thing, is that there was actually some exciting some exciting / interesting wins that night, which were a little bit overshadowed by other things taking place.
Yeah, and one of which I thought was Dune. I really loved seeing that win Best Film Editing and Best Score, because sometimes films like that, like Marvel films or, you know, those kind of films kind of, they just don't, you know, they're not recognised by the Academy, you know, in this kind of way. So it was kind of cool having Dune in there as one of those kind of big spectacle films like that being recognised, because it's very impressive. I mean, it's long, but it's very impressive.
It's long, but it totally holds its runtime. Like you're engaged all the way through it. It's one of those films that, like, it takes place across 3 planets or something like that, but it's all set pieces that keep you going throughout the action.
Exactly.
Whereas the film that won Best International, Drive My Car by Ryusuke Hamaguchi, like that is a long film. That's 3.5 hours long. You know? And that's like, that is a wow. That's like, okay.
And speaking of long films, did you get to see Batman in the end?
Oh yeah, I said I was going to go, and I did go. And I think, do you know what? I watched Drive My Car on Mubi the other night. I was happy to see it on Mubi, and I've been using my Mubi subscription a lot recently, actually. But I'd already sat and watched the Batman, and Drive My Car didn't feel that long after watching the Batman. Okay, I have things to say about Batman. It's far too long as a film. It's far too long. But you told me before I went to see it that Colin Farrell was in it, and I was looking out for him, and I was looking out for a guy in a nice suit or something that was really snappily dressed, and I kind of realized after a while who he was in the film, and I was like, what?
Yeah, this is so good.
The thing about it is there's been so much press attention on Robert Pattinson, and he's good in the film. He's pretty good for his character. It's emo but like, I think there should have been more attention on those performances. They were really, really good, those supporting performances.
Agreed. I think Colin was just so good.
He was. And I've seen the clip at the end with Barry Keoghan, and there's a deleted scene you can check out as well that shows that character in more detail. It's quite interesting. And yeah, there's so much going on with those characters under the surface. It's great. Paul Dano, actually, although he's got this habit of playing characters that are very unlikable, he did play a blinder.
Absolutely.
He's very good.
Yeah. Okay, well, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Yes, I liked it. I'm not going to say I loved it, but I liked it.
Okay. So other exciting things, a thing that came out during the week that we're really looking forward to talking about and advertising for listeners, especially our creatives in Ireland who are listening, is Screen Ireland is welcoming, it's like a basic income scheme launched by the government today for artists and arts workers, which is amazing, because I just think for a country that's nearly built off of our artists, you know, and our painters and our poets and our writers and all this kind of stuff, I think we've always felt a bit like they haven't been appreciated or respected, especially throughout the pandemic. So totally. This feels like a really big win.
It does. Like, artists and creatives and people who were in the freelance world, both in the UK and in Ireland, like they've kind of went without any formal support for about 2 years. You know, you had to put your health at risk to make ends meet these last 2 years. You know, whenever other people were furloughed or were staying at home or isolating or whatever, there often just wasn't a chance for people to do that. People's livelihoods have changed dramatically this last 2 years. So I think the big thing that people are going to end up reflecting on with this scheme is that I think a lot of people will be asking whether it's too late to be doing this for some people, but at the same time, like, you can't ignore the fact that a basic income scheme is massive. It's a massive thing. My understanding is this is a pilot scheme, and only 2,000 people will be selected for it once the application's open on, is it April 12th application's open?
Yeah, April 12th, yeah.
So you have to do, there's a basic eligibility check, but it looks like loads of people are eligible. Put your application in, and then they randomise the selection thing, and 2,000 people get it. And you get €325 a week for a defined period of time. Like, just the fact that exists, and that the Irish government are trialling that, and trialling it within the arts and culture sector. Like, that's very, very, very important. It's something that we should talk about a lot, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just even recognition. Like, I remember during the kind of pits of the pandemic when, you know, you'd have those addresses, you know, by the Taoiseach and that kind of stuff. Yeah. That, like, the art sector and theatres and all that kind of stuff wasn't even mentioned. I think that was nearly more annoying. Yeah. You know, it's actually just the acknowledgement and the mention or whatever. So this definitely does feel like, okay, maybe our voices were heard a little bit, and starting to get the recognition and just kind of like the respect and stuff as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the kind of thing where basic income's it's an idea that's been around for a while, but the idea is that instead of having a kind of a welfare program, like instead of having a welfare state where the people who are the very worst off get a little bit of a handout, so to speak, and it can be easily seen as a handout by some people. Instead of that, everyone who's a citizen gets a basic income, a universal basic income, regardless of what your stature is in society or whatever your circumstances are. That means nobody is ever in poverty, and it means that nobody can ever not afford basic services, and it means that everyone's freed up to do the things that they want to do and that they love to do. It means people have more time to spend with their families and so on. And there's been lots of criticisms of it over the years that have been completely debunked. There's lots of studies and trials that have taken place in different places that have been really successful, especially ones in Scandinavia and ones in different parts of the UK that have been trialed at similar scales. And it's just really, the possibilities that can come out of this are very exciting.
Absolutely, it's really, really exciting. So anything else? Have you been watching anything in the last 2 weeks?
Yes. So yeah, I've been using that movie subscription quite a bit, and catching up on a lot of stuff at home, especially last week when I was kind of down with the lurgy a little bit. One thing that I checked out that I think is worth mentioning to people is I've been meaning to catch up with this for a long time, but I finally caught a show called Hidden Assets, which features Angeline Ball in the lead role, and a few other festival friends. Aaron Monaghan's in there, quite a prominent role. Cool to see him in there. Hidden Assets is a TV show that takes place within a thing called the Criminal Assets Bureau. It's shot in Limerick in Ireland, and a lot of it takes place in Antwerp in Belgium. So it's got this sort of international feel to it, which is quite nice for a sort of a detective-y, crimey kind of thing, and there's lots of high-stakes stuff. I've only watched the first couple of episodes now, but I'm getting really into it.
Amazing. Really it looks like a really, really good production.
It is, it's really well made. The drama in it is well done. It feels like a kind of an Irish version of a noir-y, like a Scandi noir kind of thing. So maybe just like a wetter lowlands and Irish version of that kind of noir-y thing. But yeah, it's really nice.
I'll definitely check it out. And is there anything going on with IFL at the moment? Any screenings happening?
Yeah, so a few things going on at our end. The next thing we've got coming up is a screening of, I guess you'd call it a classic comedy now. It's a film called Waking Ned, or if you're in America, it's known as Waking Ned Divine. So Waking Ned's one I remember from my childhood. It came out in the 90s. It's the story of a little island where there is a winning lotto ticket that no one has claimed, and the villagers find out that it was Ned's lottery ticket, and the shock of finding out that he was a lottery winner gave him a heart attack and he died. But this is classic Irish response. This like, oh, someone, poor Ned has died, but sure, wouldn't he have wanted the whole island to share his multi-million-pound winnings? So we'll pretend to be Ned.
Aye.
To claim the lotto winnings. And then the whole drama is them trying to pull the wool over the man from the lottery to prove that someone else is Ned Devine. It's like one of those sort of very Hollywoodized Irish comedies from that period, but it's great crack. And we're screening that at the Irish Cultural Centre in Hammersmith on Tuesday, the 19th of April. That's on sale right now via the ICC website. It's only a £5 for a ticket.
Oh,
so
nice.
Come down for that. And the reason we're screening Wake and Ned is because we've got a new comedy course that we're doing at the Irish Cultural Centre. So that starts the Saturday after that.
Oh, nice.
And it's on for 6 Saturday mornings from 11 till 1. It's just called Irish Screen Comedy, and it's run by our friend Lance Petit. It's going to be exploring Irish screen comedy through the ages, from like the 1950s studio stuff that was made at Ardmore through to stuff like Derry Girls and more recent comedy stuff that's come out of Ireland since there's been a bit of a boom in production. So that's another thing that's happening.
Brilliant. Well, today I am joined with Carolyn, Bracken and Hazel Doupe. For today's interview, we chat about Kate Dolan's debut feature film, which is very impressive, called You Are Not My Mother.
Indeed you are. And as you caught up with Hazel and Carolyn, I caught up with the film's director, Kate Dolan. So we're covering all bases on You Are Not My Mother this week.
So for those of you who don't know, the film is about a family in a North Dublin housing estate, and the young girl Char, who's played by Hazel, her mother goes missing, and when she returns, she's kind of determined to uncover the truth of her disappearance and unearth the dark secrets that surround her family. And it's a really impressive, accomplished film by Kate. It's really cool. It like kind of mixes Irish folklore and the supernatural, which is really, really cool. I love seeing that in a modern way, in a modern kind of urban way. And if I'm correct, it is out in cinemas today in the UK. So if you haven't seen it yet, there's no spoilers in this, but go and see it, then listen to the podcast, or the other way around. And I hope you all enjoy it.
Nice one. Looking forward to hearing this one, actually.
Thanks, Gerry. See you soon.
See you, Niamh.
Bye. If you're part of the regular Irish Film London audience or want to get more from your experience, consider joining our growing family of members for a range of exciting benefits. Irish Film London is a non-for-profit organisation. Our mission is to promote the best new Irish film to audiences all over the UK, and with the help of this podcast, the world. If you become a festival friend or a festival champion, you get perks like discounted tickets for films and events, free access to Irish Film from Home films, and invites to networking events, and so much more. So check it out now. Hazel and Carolyn, thank you both so much for taking the time to come on and chat to me today. I'm very privileged to meet the two of you. I adored the film, so I'm dying to dive straight in and chat about it. I just want to say as well, we were supposed to have Miss Jordan Jones, but she wasn't feeling the best, so we hope she gets better very soon, and no doubt we'll be having her on at some point in the future. So first of all, I guess I just kind of want to say how impressive and accomplished the film is, especially for the director Kate's first feature. I mean, like, what a brave subject matter and genre for your first feature. So I guess let's kind of go right back and chat to me about when and how You Are Not My Mother came into your lives. So Hazel, I'll start with you.
Firstly, thank you for having us on. I'm very excited. It came into my life when I was shooting a series down in Clare, and I was house sitting for somebody at the time. And it was a very dark evening, and I had just come back for a nice sunset walk with the dog that I was dog sitting for as well. And I remember sitting down and the fire was going, and I had some tunes on. They were like the It Follows soundtrack and those kinds of soundtracks. Yeah, and I'd earlier that day just got the script in, and my agent said, okay, this is a cracking role, so give it a read and see what you think. And yeah, he wasn't lying. It was unbelievable. And like the script was so considered, and there were like virtually no jump scares. And I'm a massive fan of horror, but I'm a massive fan of like creep factor horror. And yeah, I'm not so into the jump scares. So like getting a script that I would be put forward for the lead for, that was a horror film, that was a creepy horror film, that was Irish, and that was like embedded in Celtic mythology, or not Celtic mythology, but like the myths and legends that surround Ireland, that I was super into at the time, was just pretty crazy. And it was the perfect setting to read the script in as well.
I was just gonna say, talk about setting the atmosphere. That's amazing.
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
You need to know what the genre of the script is that you're going to read, so you can do that now for each script.
Yeah,
I think next time you need to be on a beach, you know, if it's some sort
exactly, yeah. Yeah, I think I'm so like, I've been in film, and I obviously love film with all of my heart, but I've been in it for so long that like I think those events in my life kind of are film centric, and I try to set up my surroundings as if I were, you know, in a film. I try to make it as ambient as possible.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And Carolyn, what about you then? What was your first introduction to You're Not My Mother?
I'd love to say it was similar to Hazel's, that I was atmospheric cabin in the woods and stuff, but no, I was in the midst of the pandemic with my kids, the homeschooling and all of that kind of stuff going on, and
scary in its own way.
That was a horror movie. Yeah. that was a horror reality. But no, I love them. They're great. But I'm glad they're back at school. No, my agent sent me on the script, and I just listen. You know, I read it. I tend to, if you get fortunate enough to be sent a script within the first kind of contact, you know, I tend to sit down and read it as quickly as possible. And I just absolutely loved it. You know, what bounced off the page was what Kate did. She seemed to be so familiar with the world that she was creating, and just that beautiful merging of, you know, mental health and Irish folklore was just absolutely beautiful. It bounced off the page. I loved reading it. There were a couple of scenes that I went back and read again, just going, how on earth are they going to do this? And but I kept emotionally a little bit detached for a while, because when you kind of have to operate as if it's yours, but compartmentalize it to until, you know, you get the audition and you get the green light. So yeah, I connected to it very, very quickly, and especially to the role of Angela. But yeah, it wasn't until I got the green flag after doing a little chemistry test with Hazel that I was able to get really excited about it. Yeah.
That is quite it's quite an impressive thing that actors have to do, that I don't think, you know, people who aren't in the industry really understand. That like sometimes, you know, when you are going for auditions, or you get sent a script, or you get through a few different rounds and callbacks and that kind of stuff, you know, the hope is growing larger and larger, and you're getting more and more attached to the project. But you always really do have to keep that kind of little wall up as well before, because it could just, you know, you gotta look after yourself as well, you know, because the industry is obviously about like, you know, rejection and disappointment and all that kind of stuff. So it's really great that you had this good feeling, but, you know, you still had that little wall up. But then obviously when you got the green flag, I imagine it was just so satisfying of like, okay, here we go, you know, because you had felt it so early on of like, yeah, I can see myself in this, you know.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's you know, if you're going to do a good self-tape or audition, you have to operate as if the role is yours, and then very quickly just let it go afterwards, and just, you know, it's out of your control. Then you just have to kind of hand it over and hope for the best. So luckily enough, this was one time that it did work out. So
exactly. And what was your, I guess I'm just so interested in both of yours, but particularly yours, Carolyn, what was your kind of process in creating Angela, and like what was your kind of approach and prep and stuff like that? Did you kind of go off and do a lot of your own work and then kind of come to Kate with that, or was it kind of a a thing that you all kind of worked on together?
Yeah, it was very collaborative, the script alone, like Kate wrote a wonderful script and fairly fleshed out characters. Do you know what I mean? So there was a lot to refer to there. And, we were in a pandemic, so we couldn't meet in person at all. We just kind of had to do it over Zoom and stuff. So there were a lot of conversations. Kate would send me a little bit of source material of things that inspired her around the character. We had some very candid conversations just about the nature of who Angela is. And to be honest with you, like, for lack of a better word, I suppose the process for me is just to sit and think a lot and draw from the spectrum of human behavior that I've experienced. You know what I mean? I would, I think any woman at the age of 39 who is a mother would be able to relate to Angela very well. And then when it comes to the more ambiguous part of who she is or what she becomes, that was, Kate was very good at steering me in the right direction there. And there's that, malevolence in all of us there somewhere. So, the potential for it is always there within you. So just being able to tap into that was pretty cool, I have to say, because you have to be very, you have to be behaved in real life. And it's the wonderful thing about being an actor. Somebody gives you the green light to go, you can be as malevolent as you want. And you just kind of go, great. But keeping in mind, the mental health aspect of it as well, and for it to be as sympathetic and respectful as possible.
Absolutely, definitely. And Hazel, I really love that the film is from your character Char's point of view, in like we have that sense of a coming of age, and in that coming of age sometimes we learn that eventually, learning that your parents aren't always these perfect flawless figures in your life, which in itself is quite scary. It can be quite scary to see a parent who's quite ill and or when their flaws kind of come to the surface, especially having always been maybe a sturdy figure in our lives. So what was that kind of the initial foundations of the fear that you wanted to draw on for Char? What was that like, exploring that?
Definitely, yeah. I think you hit that on the head there, because Kate and I talked a lot about family and how, like, there's one line in the script, Jordan, if she was here, she'd be able to quote it, but I'll quote it for her. We're having a conversation, Char and Suzanne, and she says family is the scariest fucking thing on the planet. And it is, to a certain extent, because it reflects things that you don't want to see about yourself. You don't really, when you're growing up, want to be like your parents. You just kind of want them to be as perfect as possible. And I have a lot to draw from as well in that regard. Like, as does everybody. We've all had, I mean, if we're lucky enough, we've all had parents at one point or another, and different experiences with them and different experiences with family and loss and losing yourself at a certain age, and having to navigate the world without your parents, or without like their safety net, as Char does have to do. It's really scary, and I think that's where a lot of the fear came from. And that's mainly where I drew it from. Was definitely, you hit that on the head there, Niamh.
I think that I will always remember the day. I have an older brother, and I remember my mom one day saying to him, when I was really, really young, there's quite an age difference. I remember her saying, I've never done this before. And I always remember going, oh yeah, because you just kind of always expect, Carolyn, I'm sure you'll appreciate that as well. You always just kind of assume your parents have always been parents. There definitely gets to that point in your life where you realize, oh no, they were people like before you existed, in their own right. Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing to learn as you grow up. And you can definitely see that Char is going through this in a different way. And Carolyn, your performance as Angela it's so impressive. I mean, emotionally and physically as well. But did you find it hard to kind of tap in and out of someone who's quite ill in a way? And I guess then as well, we can kind of chat about the comment about mental health in the film. And I think it's dealt with in it's in a really great way, you know, because the monster is that kind of representing of mental illness, but it's also so much more than that, which I think is very important that the film does. So yeah, did you find it hard kind of tapping in and out of that? Were you able to kind of leave it and then go home and, you know?
Yeah, like I think maybe with the time You Are Not My Mother came around, tapping into that was not all that difficult. You know, we were in the midst of a pandemic. Times were tough. And, you know, I think, Hazel, you probably felt the same thing. Everybody was just so grateful to be working. You know what I mean? So the atmosphere on the set was really, really nice. So kind of tapping into the lighter parts of Angela wasn't, you know, it wasn't too difficult. And then, you know, when you're possibly not in the best mental health of your life either, tapping into the darker side of it was just a little bit more accessible. And I found that just being able to get such a wide berth from Kate as well. Do you know what I mean? We'd have conversations and I'd be like, how far can I take this? And she was like, as far as you want. You know what I mean? So there was quite a wide berth there in what I could do. And you know, it's obviously a type of performance that I really enjoy. I like it, you know, that it was a challenge, you know. I didn't find, there was probably maybe a little bit of trepidation around one particular scene, you know, just the hope to get it right and the not pressure from anybody else, just my own internal, you know, pressure just to get it right. But other than that, it was just every second of it I loved. Hard, light, heavy, dark, you know. Give me another role like that again and I'll be delighted.
I imagine quite cathartic in a way, you know, that kind of coming out of the pandemic and like, as you said, dealing with all of those kind of different emotions and our own mental health and that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, just being able to have the permission to let loose. And I imagine it was very cathartic. Yeah.
Absolutely, in the best way possible, because we're all doing what we love. Like, you know, there was no guarantees. Like, we were in the second lockdown. The first lockdown, absolutely nothing was going on in terms of shooting. You know, there was online, virtual, but there was nothing, you know. So when, you know, being given the green light to actually shoot something, I think everybody was just really, really grateful to be there. So everybody just wanted to put their best foot forward and do a really good job. And I think that's the movie that was eventually realized, you know.
Yeah, and I think with the subject matter of the film, as you touched on there, like, because the subject matter of the film can be, I imagine, quite heavy, it is so important to have that light kind of nice feeling then on set with your crew and your other cast members and stuff like that. And Hazel, what was it like? When did you first see Carolyn? When she was in as Angela with all of her makeup? And because I do just want to comment on that, especially for the makeup artists, like, it was incredible, you know, without the use of CGI or special effects or anything like that. But it was also still quite understated in that, like, it was really believable as well, but it was horrific. What was it like seeing her in that for the first time?
God. What it was like seeing her was I just felt like I just stepped into like an alternate universe. It was really, really weird. And Carolyn was this like it was like she was there but wasn't really there. It was very, very odd. And she was walking around, she'll tell you this herself, but she was walking around as if like she didn't have any of this makeup on and everyone was just looking at her like, ugh. She was like, what do you mean, guys? But yeah, the one thing that actually got me, that like made me physically like recoil, was when I had to hug you, Carolyn, inside the bonfire structure, and she had all these like welts and boils all over her like chest and arms, and oh my god, feeling those boils against my skin is the one thing I don't think I'll ever want to do again.
I just remembered the makeup test. The first time that you would have seen it, when Madonna and Roisin, the makeup artist, they did an amazing job, but I went for a makeup test one day and I had a lot of it on, so I looked horrendous. And Hazel came in and she was like, "Oh, hey." And I was like, "Come on, sit down and we have some girl talk." And you know what I mean? I just had a flashback of that there. It was it was hilarious. But yeah, a lot of the time, like particularly the bonfire scene, I just forgot it was on. And then I get these responses, these physical responses from people looking at me really uncomfortably. And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I look like hell." Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, it was amazing. It really, really was. And it really kind of just elevated it just to the next level. Then it was fantastic. So what was it like then working with Kate as a director, in the sense that, you know, I can only imagine that there had to be so much trust built in a story that's so steeped in kind of supernatural themes, you know, for it to flow and work and be believed in, because a lot of stuff, you know, the films sometimes really come to life, you know, in the post with the score and, you know, any kind of extra things that needed to be added in. So yeah, what was it like kind of working with Kate as a director, Hazel?
It was great. I mean, from start to finish, it was very much smooth sailing. Well, I had a week where the very first week I was quite unsure, and it was my first role where I was playing the lead away from all my family, because my mom used to come on set with me. So I just kind of turned 18, so this was my first like lead role, and it was quite a dark script as well. So, but my character too was just very like, not standoffish, but like you can tell by her, she's got a lot of things going on internally. And sometimes I was kind of like, am I showing those things? Like, I know I want to be understated about it, but like, can you even see anything? So yeah, I was very unsure. And then Kate sat me down and was like, "What's going on?" One of the days when I was really unsure, and she kind of said to me like, "Hazel, we're both doing something then that we don't like, we've never done this before, so why don't we just like go for it and see how it is?" She was like, "It's just a movie at the end of the day." So it's not life or death, like we can just see what happens. But also Kate had such she had such vast understanding of her own script, which is very rare and very precious for like for a first time director personally, and then for the actor it's just so helpful to have somebody who knows what they want and it's cemented in their own brains, that you don't even like, Kate just had to tell us what she wanted, and then it was like that. Then from then on it was easy-ish, you know. Obviously you still have the complications, but yeah, when a director knows what they want, it's like,
Yeah, because it's so important to feel safe, you know, in and like that, if you're ever second guessing yourself or anything like that, to have that kind of support and for them to recognize it, you know, the way like you were saying, she sat down with you and was like, "What's going on?" as opposed to you having to, like, she was aware enough to kind of see that there was something not clicking, and then you guys worked through it. That's really lovely to hear. And what about you, Carolyn?
Very similar to what Hazel said. She's quite an incredible person. Do you know what I mean? She, for somebody, it was her first feature directing and writing, and it just seemed to just come so naturally to her. There was never any point where there was any feelings of unsafety, and just, you know, from what Hazel said there, she knew that script really well. So working in the supernatural and working in the Irish folklore, and it was just in the tapestry of the script, like, so in terms of performing it and stuff, you know, she made that really easy. She was extremely collaborative as well. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't creative control that she was looking for. She was looking for input. You know what I mean? What do you think? You know, there was definitely a lot of collaboration, and she's got a really good sense of humor as well. She's really funny. You know what I mean? So throwing a bit of humor and not taking it all so seriously, even though it has to be, it's kind of like a paradox, you know, you kind of, you know, it's contradictory. You know, you have to take it very seriously, but you also have to have a bit of a laugh at the same time. And we were able to do that. Like, I don't know, like, I think it's supposed to be quite common on horror sets that the atmosphere generally, when you're yell cut, it's really light and it's a lot of fun. And Kate, from the top down, that was my experience of her as a director. Extremely approachable, really funny, really smart. Safe hands the whole time, you know.
Oh, we're so excited to see what more she does as well. I just know it's going to be very, very exciting. We briefly touched on it there. Like, I adore the Irish. I'm a big horror fan myself, but I adore the Irish folklore aspect of the film and the fact that it's set at Halloween, because I don't know if a lot of people actually know that Halloween originated in Ireland as the Celtic Festival of Samhain. And I love the blending of Irish folklore in the urban modern setting of Dublin. It definitely reminded me of films like Candyman, you know, the kind of folklore aspect, and then The Exorcist in regards to building that realistic kind of family unit for audiences, and then Rosemary's Baby in the sense of like the point of view of Char and stuff like that. So you've got a pretty great mix of the greats in there that you do really feel, you know, throughout. So do either of you have any favorite horror films, or maybe do you even like horror? I know some actors love acting in them, but then they just can't watch them. But what about you guys? Do you guys have any horror faves?
I love horror from a very uneducated standpoint, if you know what I mean. When I was a kid, it was my favorite genre. I've read every Stephen King book more than once. I would seek out movies to fear that would instill that fear and that anticipation and that sense of feeling unsettled. You know, I loved it, and I still do. I think I just distanced myself from it a little bit in the last. So any kind of horrors that I watch are those really obvious ones that are big block, but you know what I mean. I don't go sifting. Like when you hear Kate talking about horror, like she knows it all. She's just got such a brilliant brain when it comes to horror. So it'd be false advertising if I was to go, I know them all. But you know, horrors when I was growing up, God, what would it have been? Oh my God. When I was growing up, do you know what keeps coming into my head? And I know it doesn't fall into the genre of horror. It was The Silence of the Lambs. I found it terrifying. But I know
it is.
It is
Sure. Yeah, psychological horror.
And then, you know, in recent times, I do love the merging of some sort of metaphor and mental health. So I love the Babadook. I love, you know what I mean? Those types of ones that kind of go into that into that merging. And I really liked It Follows as well. I remember there was some random one back in the 90s called White Noise. That terrified the life out of me. And I think it had Michael Keaton in it or something like that. And it's probably real schlocky, but I really, really liked it. So yeah, it's hard to name one, but yeah.
And Hazel, what about you?
Carolyn stole mine at the last second there. It's like It Follows for sure. And probably The Wailing as well. I love that film. And then One Cut of the Dead for some reason. I know it's a you know, a farce of a film, but it's so good. I would recommend that to anybody who wants a good time. Yeah, it's a great film.
But I think as well with horror films, like, I think it's very hard to that's why I said at the beginning, you know, I found this so brave of Kate to do, because it's quite hard to do one that feels like we just haven't seen it before, you know. Yeah, it kind of feels like, what else can we do, you know, like Hazel, you were saying earlier, you know, you can kind of only watch a certain amount of jump scares, and then it just kind of doesn't really work anymore, or you just get so used to them, you're expecting them, or you know, whatever. And I just really think that You're Not My Mother is so fresh in that sense of, you don't technically see that much, which I always think is very important in horror films, that you don't see too much, you know. So it's kind of all about how you're perceiving it yourself as audience members. But one thing that really stood out to me was the storyline of Jordan's character and the bullies in the film. Hazel, what was it like kind of shooting that aspect of the film? Because sometimes I always think people who don't know when they're taking it too far can be the scariest sometimes. And also sometimes I think when people say bullies, you know, they think of someone just kind of bashing into you in school, when actually it can be so much worse than that as a young adult. So what was that aspect of the film like for you?
Well, luckily, yeah, I feel very privileged to have been in a position when I was younger that I was kind of just doing what I wanted to do, and I wasn't getting any shit for it, like, and I never experienced bullying to that extent or at all, really. Yeah, I was very privileged. So like, but I knew I had seen it around, and I'd seen it in a place that was pretty tame. So I knew how far bullying could go, if you're outside the limits. And yeah, it didn't seem that far-fetched to have someone who's just a bit off their rocker looking for bit of, violent excitement in their life. And the way Suzanne's character navigates that so well, it's like she knows when someone's just taking it a little bit, well, in fairness, the whole time she's taking it too far, but at least Suzanne has the self-awareness to switch over when something strikes a chord with her. And I think that changes Suzanne's character a lot. I loved Suzanne's character from the very beginning when I read that script. But yeah, it was a weird one. It was a weird one to kind of bring to the screen, something that I feel like a lot of people won't necessarily believe outside of Ireland. Because I was talking to somebody who's from America a couple of days ago, and they were like, is that what Irish bullies really are like? And we were just like, yeah, sometimes it is like. So yeah, I mean, it takes a little bit of time to understand the gravity of like how far things can go. So once you've got that understanding, and once I talked to Kate a bit about it, and I was like, okay, so this person is actually going to go for this, and she was like, yeah, that's the aim. You just accept it, and you're like, yeah, that actually does seem a little bit plausible.
Yeah, I think Jordan, like exactly what you said, Jordan's character, and she just did such a great job of her progression as a character. It wasn't just like, now I'm a different person. She still had that. She's still the same person, but like that, her perspective and kind of, oh, no, actually, that's not right, which is also another massive thing in a coming of age thing of getting to that point of standing up for yourself and for others, which is quite hard when you're at that age. It's hard to find your own voice. And so I really love that kind of was an underlying thing there, that her character kind of started to find her own voice and stick up for herself and other people as well. And like, because you had to do that, like your character Char, she didn't have that much dialogue, so you briefly touched on it earlier when you were saying when you were kind of thinking, oh God, am I getting across what I want to? But you really did such a beautiful job. But what was it like? Kind of, was that quite new for you to have a performance in front of you that had to be quite insular and kind of visible, as opposed to, there was kind of nothing for you to hide behind in a way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Like I've done characters like that before, and actually that's kind of what my career thus far has been based off of, is very introverted, well, not introverted, but introspective characters that think a lot and don't say too much. And I love playing those kinds of people. And this was just taking it to the next level, because she really doesn't have that much dialogue at all, and most of it is, what are you doing? What are you doing, mom? So yeah, I did have to like really adjust. Even though I'd done so many characters like that before, I had to adjust to everything being in the face, and especially when you're scared, like when you're not being physically scared by something around you and you have to muster up the fear from somewhere. It's difficult enough. So yeah, there were days where like you'd have to be upset about something, but you'd have to be upset about it for hours, or you'd have to be scared by something, you'd have to be scared for like, you'd have to keep that going for a long time. So yeah, I don't even know how I kept it going, but I just, when you've got a job to do and it's in front of you and it's like the most precious thing to you at that time of your life, and it's the one thing you've wanted for like years, the thing of your career it's like happening now. I don't know, something in you just clicks and you want it more than anything.
Absolutely. Well, you did such a fantastic job of it. You really did. I like that, what you were saying about kind of, oh God, can I do this? What, for the both of you, what did you learn? Because as an actor, like, each project that you do, you learn something from it and you kind of bring it on to the next, and your skill sets and your toolbox is growing all the time. What did you learn on this film as an actor that you think you're going to bring into other projects in the future? Carolyn?
Wow, that's a great question. Because for me, it was my first kind of supporting lead in a feature. Do you know what I mean? So there were a lot of firsts for me on that shoot. A huge amount of where I am now is what I learned from that. I think, God, I don't even know where to start. I think I trust myself a little bit more as an actor now. It's hard to tell in the early days, and when the work is few and far between, and are you heading in the right direction? Are you mastering the craft are you mastering the craft basically? And that really helped, just that intense burst of 5 to 6 weeks shooting and being able to live in a character like this woman and realizing it. And that to me, it just just a little bit of a kind of a box ticked of, okay, I can do this, I am heading in the right direction. And just the absolute joy of being in a job like this, you know what I mean? I think it just reaffirmed that I'm exactly where I need to be, and it's an industry that I absolutely love. I don't even know if that answers the question. Like, there's a huge amount learned, but just being able to nail it down to one thing is a little bit difficult. But just definitely, like, I absolutely adore the job that I get to do. So it really kind of reaffirmed that, because sometimes you can have the odd doubt here and there, kind of go, God, I haven't worked in 18 months.
It's really important to remember, oh yeah, this is why I do it. All those times when you're not working, or when things are quiet, or when you kind of maybe do a job that you don't have a lot of graph for, or and then you get something like this and you go, oh yeah, this is why all of those other jobs or all those other times not working, this is why I do it. Because I know some days you are like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? So that's really nice, to remember that feeling, and then, because it can propel you on then and get that motivation kind of going again, because it's hard to keep it lit all the time, And Hazel, what about you?
I think this has challenged me to not take myself so seriously, and to not to just have a bit more fun on set. Like, I loved having fun on set, but like when I was younger, I started acting at the age of 9, and that was my spree time. Like, I absolutely loved being on set, and I would say to my mom after the end of a day of shooting, I'd be like, oh my God, I get to do this all again tomorrow? What do you mean? It was such a good time. And then somewhere along the line, I decided that I needed to start being more serious about it and taking myself and the craft more seriously. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, this job, we're getting to work with Carolyn, Jordan, Kate, and all the wonderful men and women that were on the cast and crew. Kind of just really showed me, like, you actually just don't have to be so serious all the time, and you can give out a good performance and make really good connections with people and just love your life while you're doing it. Because it's like, if you're living your life to do these jobs for like a month or 2 months out of the year that you're getting to work, why wouldn't you just like throw yourself in and let all your inhibitions go and just give yourself to it, and not not just pretend that you're like this big shot who has to sit in the room and listen to music until you're ready to come out and do your stuff. But I think that's what I'll take with me to the end of time, because getting to work on this and getting to not take myself so seriously was pretty crazy, and like amongst all of what was going on, like it was a really intense horror film, and learning that you don't have to do that is a really valuable piece of kit for my next couple of years of work.
That's fantastic. I think what I've both taken from your guys' point there is just trust in yourself, because like that, with the industry like that, with the you know, the disappointment and all that kind of stuff, just trust yourself and like that. Yeah, enjoy it because it goes so quick, and then it could be a big gap, and then yeah, so that's really, really lovely to hear. Well, ladies, thank you both so much for coming on to chat to me. It's been such a pleasure. And here at Irish Film London, we wish you both the best with all of your future successes. No doubt we'll have you both on here again very soon. And yeah, we hope to see you very soon. So thanks so much, ladies.
Thank you, Niamh.
So, Kate Dolan, thank you so much for joining me. It's really great to talk to you about your brilliant new film, You Are Not My Mother. I wanted to start by asking you about the look and the tone and style of the film. Like, how did you come up with the visual style that you wanted to create with this?
Yeah, I think, I think from the, like, on the page, it was always going to be quite a tense film, and I suppose kind of more dark in tone and just more sinister. And so I was kind of the idea was always based around Char and the protagonist of the film, and that she's like this young person coming of age in a family where she doesn't really feel safe or supported. And you kind of, when a parent is unwell or they're kind of in that way, that the house can feel quite claustrophobic, and it can feel very oppressive as an atmosphere. So, we kind of tried to do that as much as possible in the style. I suppose that the style was really based around Char's POV of that world. And so the visual language was very much based on kind of putting the audience in her shoes as much as possible. So, we have a lot of shots that are very close on her. So you feel kind of like you feel that world pressing in on her as if you are her, and that the house then, there's pockets of shadow everywhere. The shadows are kind of closing in all the time, even in the daylight scenes, that they feel oppressive, and it doesn't feel like a kind of a happy place to be. But not sacrificing kind of color and making sure we still had a rich color palette in there so that it doesn't feel too drab either, and that got like rich earthy tones and that kind of thing. The pagan kind of ideas within as well, like the fire and the water and earth, and that kind of symbolism was a guide with the color palette as well, with the production designer. So that was kind of part of it too. But it was we kind of, sometimes there would be a shot that Narian would offer up, and he'd be like, "What about this shot?" And I would say, "It's a beautiful shot, but like it takes you out of the kind of perspective of Char." So we kind of just stuck with her as much as possible.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, it definitely feels like a film that focuses on Char's perspective of going through all these crazy things. I suppose I wanted to ask you about working with this brilliant cast. So we've already spoke to Hazel, Doupe, and Carolyn Bracken earlier this week, and they've obviously talked about how they've worked with you and the process that from their perspective. Carolyn's especially talked about how you allowed them as cast members to have quite a significant range in terms of exploring their characters on screen. But obviously, it being a first feature film, it's a bit of a journey to go on altogether. Did you have a particular approach to how you wanted to work with the cast?
I think with like when you're working with actors, as a director, I think you kind of really need to feel out what each actor, how they like to work. So, I always like to ask people that first off, whenever I meet them or get to talk to them, like, how do you like to work? Do you like to rehearse a lot, or do you prefer to do it this way or that way? And I think immediately when I started out the conversations with them asking that, I think even Hazel, maybe it was like, I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of them said, "Oh, I've never been asked that before." And I was like, that's so bizarre that like a director wouldn't ask how you like to work to get a good sense of like how you can work together. So I think it was always very like a kind of collaborative process in that way from the very get-go. And then when there was an open dialogue like that, if they said, like, "Oh, well, what should I kind of think it should be this way," and I would have, if it wasn't right, I would say, "Well, no, because of this or that. You know, once you have a kind of a strong idea of, I suppose, the characters and how you want them to appear on screen, I think it's quite easy then to answer the questions of the actors in that way. But yeah, I think I'm always like, I'm not the kind of director, I think, who has strict storyboards where you basically are kind of just placing the actor. I mean, like, walk from here to here and it has to be exactly this line because that's what the shot is. I like to kind of let them move around and make, you know, the space their own. Like with the dance scene with Carolyn, like I kind of just let her create that with a little bit of guidance. And then we meet in rehearsals. I brought Hazel and Carolyn into the house location that we had secured, and Carolyn just kind of showed me what she was trying in the space, and then I just kind of guided her, and I was like, well, the camera might find it hard to get you if you go here, so just maybe avoid this or play with the levels here. So it was like really collaborative in that way, which I think, you know, it builds up a lot of trust. So then you kind of feel like you can kind of, it's really nice to work together. You don't feel like you're kind of dictating to anybody.
Yeah. I mean, does that openness and that sort of, I guess, flexibility, do you think that adds to a more creative process on set then?
Yeah, and I think just a nicer atmosphere, because I think the film is quite heavy and dark. Do you know what I mean? So I think you know, I didn't want the atmosphere on set to feel like that in between the takes or setups. Do you know what I mean? That you kind of, I feel like there was a good atmosphere that they felt they could kind of laugh and have fun, and like, you know, we all felt really prepared. So I don't think there was any kind of surprises in terms of, oh, well, this isn't how I thought this scene was going to be. Like we all kind of knew what we were expecting. So then, the atmosphere and the flexibility on set was, you know, really nice.
Cool. I mean, it definitely shows that there's a good relationship in terms of the performances that you've been able to get out of it. But I want to also ask you, about the process of getting the film itself made. So for first time feature, which you know, I know I've mentioned it a lot, but like it's a really great piece of work, and it's really like a testament to your talent, Kate, for a debut feature to be as strong as this. But you're also the writer on the project. You're the writer director, and I think that there's a particular journey that writer directors go on to get their film made, because you're much more invested in it from an earlier point. So yeah, like what was that journey like? What was the process of getting it from script to being in the can, I guess?
Yeah, well, it was kind of an interesting process. It was probably a bit different than it would be normally, because it was done through this Screen Ireland scheme called POV. So it's to get female writer directors or just directors and writers separately as well to get to that first feature level. So it was quite an expedited process in that I had a rough idea. It was like one page maybe. And then we heard this scheme was coming up, this producer that I wanted to work with, because they kind of, D11s, who works with fantastic films, they do a lot of horror. And it just came along, and we had like 3 weeks till the deadline. And I was like, I have this one pager idea I think could work for it, because it's very contained, because the budget was going to be 400k. And Dee said, let's put it in. So then I did like a 10-page treatment in the like couple of weeks into the lead in of the deadline, and we got it. And then the writing process was quite fast as well. You know, it was kind of like 1.5 years to 2 years, maybe, like writing the script. Maybe it was 1.5 years, actually. It was quite quick. And, you know, so we had a script editor in that process, the Screen Ireland provided, and they gave us notes and that kind of stuff. So it was like an expedited development process that you'd normally go through. So, you know, as a writer and a director, I think it was great. It was kind of a gift in a way that you didn't have a lot of time to overthink things, which sometimes can like kill you in terms of like, you know, waiting for it to be perfect to kind of make it. So in that way, it was really good. And then you know, you had those budgetary parameters, so you always knew that they were going to be there. So that kind of was a gift in a way to give you like, well, you know, we're not going to be able to do this, so we're just going to have to make this simpler. Or, you know, we're not going to have this kind of equipment, so it will have to be more like this. So, you know, sometimes that can help you just not kind of be bogged down by decision making. You kind of, a lot of the decisions are made for you.
Sort of less is more kind of approach, really, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then shooting the film, like, how did that go? Because you shot it in late 2020, am I right? Or was it early
21? November 2020,
yeah. So
yeah,
that must have been interesting.
Yeah, it was like, it was really funny actually, because it was obviously the film set at Halloween. So our plan was always to shoot B-roll on actual Halloween night, and then our shoot started on the 2nd of November. So, and then we were going to be into like a 4-week shoot or whatever. And then the week before, the government was like, everyone's being put in second lockdown, Halloween's cancelled. So like we had to just cancel shooting B-roll on Halloween because there was no trick-or-treating, there was nobody around. Yeah, so it was like, it was kind of a weird way to start the film. But I think, people in filmmaking, like, filmmakers and people who work on film are really pragmatic and are very good at problem solving and are very creative. So I think, it was a little bit unsettling to make your first film in that kind of space, but I think everyone just gets on with it and gets used to it, and then you kind of are being tested twice a week, and then you just go and you do the things. And it was funny, there was only kind of one big scene with a lot of extras that I was really worried about, which was the Halloween night where she's walking down the street, and I was like, we had a production meeting about it, and I was like, look, if we get on set and it's like 10 people, I don't know what I'm gonna do with that. Like, how's that gonna work? And they so the second AD, he was a real hero of the day. He basically went to the neighborhood we were going to film in, dropped leaflets into all the families on that street, and basically being like, did your kids miss Halloween? Well, we're doing a fake Halloween for this movie, do you want to come? And then literally we turned up that day and there was about 150 kids in full Halloween costume, like like Brilliant. they went all out. They were obviously like getting ready all day, and I was like, this is great. But then like the producer was like really stressed because she was like, I hope they don't, like, nobody calls the guards, thinks we're having like a huge celebration or something.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of stressful, but no, it's brilliant. It was like, so we kind of got, that was a really kind of lucky day for us that it didn't kind of impact us in that way. But I think other than that, it was all very contained, so it didn't really affect us too much.
Good. Oh geez, the process even of like putting a schedule together during COVID lockdowns and stuff is just like makes my producer brain explode a bit. So fair play to them all.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the next stage after that, once you got it in the can, what kind of journey was it to get it here onto the screen?
Yeah, it was fairly straightforward because, like, again, with the budgetary constraints, you don't really have a lot of room to do reshoots or change a lot of things. So what you see there is really what was on the page. And I did a lot of editing in the script stage in terms of, the script was like 106 pages, and then in prep, because the first AD was like, we won't be able to shoot 106 pages in the time we have. So I cut it down, so that was 96 pages when we shot it. And what you see is really what was on the page. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't really have a lot of wiggle room in terms of what we could do. So we just really kind of prepped as much as possible. So the edit it felt quite streamlined. And it was really nice editing process because actually the editor was one of my best friends since I've been 18. So he, we were in film school together, and he's we always watch horror movies together, and we're like, see each other almost every other day. So it was kind of, working on editing the film with him was really a lovely experience because it was kind of editing with your best friend, so it didn't feel too daunting. And because of COVID, we edited it in his house, which is just up the road from mine, with a big TV screen he has in his office and stuff. So it felt very at home, and like, it wasn't too daunting. It kind of just felt like hanging out with your friend and kind of figuring things out. So that was great. And then it was just kind of, we had a kind of 10-week edit, and then maybe that was a bit longer in the end, and then we obviously did post and outer limits, so we did the grade there and the post sound, and the composer D Hexon had done a lot of musical work in prep, so it was really great because then we could kind of hone that to be as best as it could in the post process. And then we just submitted it to TIFF and we got into Midnight Madness, which was kind of crazy and an amazing experience. So that was kind of our goal, was to get Midnight Madness at TIFF, and we were kind of holding our hope. And because we finished all the post on the film in July 2021, and then Midnight Madness was in September, so it was like
wow,
it was
pretty tight.
I mean, like, it wasn't too bad. We had sent them like a whip and then we like sent them the updated one when we were finally finished, but it was like it was kind of a dream. It was just like amazing.
Great. And congratulations then on your nominations at Dublin Film Festival this year, and your nominations at the IFTAs this year, and like it's already a well trailed film before its imminent release. So I mean, it must be just as busy a period for you now in the release, I guess.
It's actually a whole new world, which I'm getting used to, because I think, I love I've made the film and now I go and do the next thing, but then you have to kind of revisit it and talk to people about it and do interviews and that kind of stuff, and press and festivals and releases, and it's that's a whole new skill set that you kind of have to learn, which is quite I'm kind of like, no, I'm going back to do my next thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Funny. And do you think from this whole process, I mean, your debut feature must be a sort of a trial by fire thing in lots of ways, but are there big lessons that you've learned from the process that you think you'll take into future projects?
I think you learn so much. I think working with the actors taught me a lot about kind of how to collaborate with people and get what you need from an actor, and I think as well, definitely lots of practical things I learned about, like fire and setting people on fire and stuff like that. And but I think as well, like, just to kind of simplify things sometimes and like not overthink how you're doing things, and like that process of how the film was made, because we kind of had all these parameters. It kind of taught me that, like, things don't need to be perfect and amazing and exactly this thing that you want. Sometimes just making the compromise, it will still be as effective. So not to kind of stress about that. I think there's so much pressure over like making an amazing debut as a filmmaker nowadays, and it's like, I think doing this taught me, like, just make things and just try and make them as earnestly as you can with people who are really good at their job, and like that will just that will come through in what you're making, hopefully.
That's a good philosophy to take through, I think, is to just make things earnestly and just make things in general. It's good advice, right?
I think don't be sitting around waiting, just like make things.
Exactly. So what's next for you, Kate? Like, what's the next thing that you're going to make? Are you going to stay within the horror genre? Is that your space, or do you think you'll go somewhere else?
I'm a big fan of the horror genre. I've always been a horror fan since I was a kid, and reading Stephen King and all that kind of stuff. So I think it's a genre I feel very comfortable in, because I know it so well, and I know the conventions of the genre, and so I feel very comfortable in it. I know I've such a library of films that I've seen, so you can always draw from that. So I think definitely the horror space, and I think horror is really creative space to be as a filmmaker, and you can really let your imagination run wild, and you can take very abstract ideas and you can turn them into a monster, or you can turn them into a ghost or whatever it is, and capture fears that, like, a drama film, it would be kind of harder to capture things, I think. So I really like that about it, and so it'll definitely be in the horror space. I think what that will be just yet is kind of it's a hard time to kind of, like, there's a lot of decisions to be made. So I'm reading lots of scripts that I've been sent, but I also have my own scripts that I've been working on.
Cool.
So it's kind of just to see, in this industry I've learned as well, like, you have to have several things going on at once, because like, you know, 3 of them might fall through, so you kind of have to have another one
exactly
that won't.
yeah. I mean, the horror genre is in a really interesting place right now. Like, I think it's having a bit of a time in the sun, or maybe a time in the shadows. I don't know what horror fans would prefer to say, but like the trend right now is, I guess, I'm really into the trend of horror stuff that we're seeing. You know, it's kind of less jump scary, less gory, more, I guess it's more of what we used to call elevated horror, but that seems to now be just like mainstream horror, which is good. It's horror that's got more backbone, I think. Yeah, like, what do you think horror's in a good place? Are you interested in the kind of stuff that you're seeing in cinemas right now?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're at a space now in the genre, I think, where you've seen everything and you've seen all the conventions. So, and like, I think horror audiences are very smart in that, like, you know, a trope straight away. It's kind of funny when you watch movies, you know, you're like, oh, they're like looking in the mirror, they're going to close the bathroom mirror, and then there's going to be something behind them. So you have to do the opposite, and you have to do the opposite again, and you have to do the opposite again, because you have to kind of constantly be subverting the expectations of the audience in those tropes.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting time, because you kind of have to find ways to do things that will be unexpected to the audience that are watching, who know the genre so well. So that's kind of, it can be really scary as a filmmaker, but I think it's fun as well, because you get to kind of try and figure out what will work. But yeah, I think it's an interesting time as well, because I think there's people making horror films from backgrounds that you might not have normally seen. So, you know, in terms of like gender or class or race or sexuality even, I think you're seeing stories told from people with like different perspectives and different experiences. So I think that's really exciting to me, that, like, you know, like a film like His House, which was about like a haunted house movie about refugees who move into accommodation in the UK. And I think, you know, that was like something that it was like, I've not seen this story before, and that's exciting to me as a horror fan. You know, I've seen many middle class white families move into a haunted house in like many films, but I think, you know, just seeing things that are different is like really exciting, and like just stories that, you know, because it's coming from a different place, they just feel fresh.
Yeah, brilliant. Good reference for His House. That's a really exciting film that it's right at the top of my watch list. So yes,
it's a good one. Yeah, it's really good.
Cool. Well, Kate, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck with the release of You Are Not My Mother. And we look forward to catching you again for your next one.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was lovely to chat to you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming on. Cheers.
Thanks, Bill.
And that's it for this week's interview. Thank you all so much for listening. We hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you to Culture Ireland and the Irish Emigrant Support Programme. Myself and Gerry will be back in a fortnight with a brand new interview. See you then.